Damn and blast! Lachlan Grant stared out the window at the quickly falling snow. He would not be able to leave today as planned. Perhaps it will let up and we can travel tomorrow. Lachlan turned to Dougal Ferguson. They had been friends since childhood, and when Lachlan became of age to need a valet, his friend applied for the position as there was little work in Scotland. In truth, Dougal was a lousy valet, and for the most part he simply lived where Lachlan did. Not that it bothered Lachlan. It wasn't as if he needed another man to help him dress, and he was glad for the company of a friend who had known him almost since birth. How was it possible that the Scots had lost major battles to the English lords who couldn't even shave themselves? He shouldn't have such uncharitable thoughts. It was this damnable weather keeping him here that had put him in a foul mood. He knew several Englishmen who could get by without the assistance of a servant, and just as many who would be lost without one. It is bad enough having to live in England half the year, but I wanted to be home in Falkirk by Christmas. It could be worse, his old friend said. How could it possibly be worse? Lachlan turned from the window and stomped toward the sideboard and poured himself a glass of whiskey. Besides, there were few bottles left, and according to his brother Ian, the stills had been busy and the grain plentiful. There were rich stores of whiskey hidden and ready to be brought back to England, as long as he wasn't caught. At least that was one benefit of being Marquess of Brachton. Nobody searched your carriage. Whiskey had gotten his family through some very dark times, whether it was to be imbibed or to be smuggled to sell to the English, and none of the brothers were eager to bring an end to the secret family business. You could be living in that mouldering manor house with barely a scrap of food on the table. Lachlan eyed Dougal over the rim of his glass. As the Marquess of Brachton, not only did you inherit this estate that you despise, but riches to help your family. Guilt settled in his stomach. He should be more thankful for this good fortune than he was. The late Marquess did nothing to assist your family when he was alive, and you've made his fortune yours. I never wanted this title, Lachlan grumbled, even though he knew since he was 10 that it would be his, once his uncle kicked up his toes. He hadn't wanted it. To prepare him for the future, Lachlan had been sent to Eton, and then to Oxford, to be educated as an English gentleman. His uncle hoped to bury the Scot in him so deep that nothing remained once Lachlan became a man. Little did his uncle know that Lachlan would remain a Scot through and through, regardless of title or land, or that his father had been English. His mother's family in Falkirk was all the family he needed, and that was where his heart lay. Not in Yorkshire. But without it, your mother and siblings would have nothing. It was the fact that his mother, brothers and sisters could now live in comfort without a care in the world that made being an English lord palatable. But that didn't mean he didn't want to be with them at Christmas. They were his family. He'd never missed a Christmas with his family, and he wasn't about to now. Dougal helped himself to the decanter and poured himself a whiskey. Perhaps the roads will be clear tomorrow and you can return home. And if not? Lachlan glanced out the window once again. At the rate the snow was falling, they would be buried by the time the sun rose. We could leave in 5 days and still make it home in plenty of time for Christmas. I wanted to leave today. He grumbled much like a petulant child while he stared out over the landscape at the side of the house. The lawn, now covered in white, ran alongside the road with only a copse of trees separating the two. The partially frozen, small lake was already covered in snow. If one did not know it was there, one would think there was just a dip in the land. Such weather made for treacherous travel, and he could only hope the clouds moved on so he wasn't stuck in this house into next year. I planned on being in Edinburgh the week before Christmas, he reminded Dougal, then home in Falkirk by Christmas Eve. Aye, for the McPhee's annual Christmas ball. Among other things, Lachlan agreed, I need to find a wife, and that is the best place to look. Dougal turned to him. You've met a number of ladies who would do well as your Marchioness this past spring during the season. You may have met more had ye bothered to attend any of the balls during the little season. I will not marry an Englishwoman. My bride will be a Scottish lass, and I plan to find her by Christmas. It shouldn't take more than a week at the most.